Hello and welcome to the special edition of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. I'm your host, Jake McDonald. For all things social media, Charm City Birdwatch related, you can follow us on Twitter at CharmCityBW, Instagram at Charm City Birdwatch, and Facebook on Facebook.com/CharmCityBirdwatch. And everything, all of our content and articles can be located on CharmCityBirdwatch.com. And of course, you're listening to this through either iTunes or SoundCloud. Be sure to subscribe to us on either platform and leave us a review. You can do that on iTunes. Make sure to leave us suggestions. Tell us what we're doing well, ways we can improve. We're always listening. And also, for any inquiries, questions, suggestions, you can also contact us, charmcitybirdwatch@gmail.com. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at my personal account, jmcdonald95. So as soon as I got the internship at WBAL Channel 11 News, I knew I wanted to sit down with this guy at some point. Just was waiting for the perfect time to do it. I know as soon as training camp started, his schedule was pretty hectic, with not only him being the voice of the Ravens, but also an anchor at TV 11 News. I knew he was going to have a very busy schedule, so we decided that the week before training camp started was going to be the best time to do this podcast. So we're going to welcome the voice of the Ravens and WBAL TV 11 sports director and anchor, Gerry Sandusky, onto the podcast here in a couple of short moments. And before we air the interview, I just wanted to say that, I've been hearing Jerry's, calls for the Ravens, his broadcast ever since I was a little kid following the Ravens. I can remember very specific calls, whether it's him screaming the Hayes in the barn as the Ravens won Super Bowl 47, or whether it was the famous Mile High Miracle, both him and Quadri Ishmael's infamous reaction on that audio clip when Jacoby Jones caught that Hail Mary that sent the game into overtime. Just hearing all those moments, I knew that, getting to know Jerry on a personal level was going to be a great experience for me. And it's been exactly that. Not only, is he not only a role model to me, but he's also someone who I consider a colleague and a friend now that I've gotten to know him over the past 2 months. And it's been great to form that relationship and have a working relationship with him too. And he's really, helped me not only improve as a professional, but, helping me along with my writing as well. I can, certainly say that in the short span of these 2 months here, I've already vastly improved as a writer, and I'm more self-aware of things as I'm compiling articles together, and I've still got more to learn. So all this put together has really not only helped me build a great relationship in the workplace, but also helped me hone my craft and build my skills that will serve me well somewhere down the line. So without further ado, we are going to welcome the voice of the Ravens and WBAL TV 11 sports director and anchor, Gerry Sandusky. All right, I'm sitting down in the WBAL conference room with not only an anchor here at WBAL Channel 11, but also the voice of the Ravens on the radio, Gerry Sandusky. You can follow him on Twitter at Gerry Sandusky and Sandusky WBAL. Jerry, I want to thank you again for joining me today.
My pleasure.
During my internship office hours on the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. So good time to have you on because, of course, the Ravens will be going into training camp mode next week with practice starting on Thursday. And some news last week came up that we have a new preseason broadcast team for the Ravens with you, former Ravens head coach Brian Billick, and CBS correspondent Evan Washburn, who, of course, worked a Super Bowl a couple years ago. So what's this mean to have, for the preseason at least, two guys with the resumes that they have?
I think it's great. Anytime you bring two people into a broadcast team that have that level of experience, it has to enhance the broadcast. And for preseason, I think it's pivotal to have Brian Billick as a part because he has spent so much of his life building teams, taking teams through training camp, understanding the sequence, and he'll be able to explain so much to viewers and listeners what is really going on behind what they see. It's one thing to watch a game in October and see, okay, in 3rd and 4, they're trying to run the off-tackle play to kill the clock and put the game away and win. It's pretty self-explanatory. But what you see in August is not always self-explanatory. And it's usually part of a much bigger puzzle that each piece eventually kind of clicks together by opening game. So having the coach take us through the preseason and take us kind of behind the curtain is going to be very powerful, I think, for Ravens fans to see the preseason in a very different light.
And again, Billick will be with the Ravens just for the preseason as he's busy with the NFL Network during the regular season, as is Evan Washburn with CBS. Now, going into Ravens and their training camp, what are the top things that you're looking for, top questions you have this season with the team entering practice a couple days?
So let's go group by group. First on offense, the big question is center and right tackle. Last year, center's gone. Jeremy Zutai, he was fairly ineffective for much of the season last year, so you need to get an upgrade there. I still think, they're still looking whether they get Mangold to sign or not. If you don't get Mangold to sign, now you don't know what you have at center. John Urschel could be there. Ryan Jensen could be there. They're very experienced guys. Big spectrum of potential performance there. Might be really good, maybe a pleasant surprise. Might not be really good, and it might be a problem. You don't know. Next area is right tackle. James Hurst, right now, going into camp, is the starting right tackle. I think James Hurst is a very good backup tackle. I don't think he is what you're looking for in a playoff caliber team at right tackle. Now, they found Rick Wagner in the draft in the 4th round a couple of years ago. They have a couple of younger guys that they could possibly plug in there, and they will definitely compete at that spot. But for the moment, there is nobody on that roster who you can look at and say, man, I feel good about right tackle. Again, there's always a possibility of a pleasant surprise. That can happen. But the reality is that's a major area of concern. And the reason is, the second area that I have questions about is the running game. Kent Dixon showed some real flashes last year, but he's suspended for the first 4 games of this season. That's a pivotal 4-game stretch, especially in a division that has such good running backs. Pittsburgh has the best running back in the NFL, Le'Veon Bell. The Bengals add Joe Mixon. I think the Browns we saw last year, the Browns have more explosive running backs than the Ravens had last year. So you're asking an awful lot of Terrence West. I think Terrence West, again, is a quality mix-and-match guy. I think he could be a good third-down guy, short yardage guy. I don't know that he's your everyday workhorse because he has not shown the ability to take a 5-yard run and break it into an 80-yard run. That's not part of his resume so far. His yard per carry average was fairly pedestrian last year. So, to me, that's a major point of concern. Danny Woodhead comes in, and he becomes a real weapon in the passing game out of the backfield. He's the best receiver out of the backfield since Ray Rice. And he will pick up a lot of the throws that Flacco would have normally tossed in the direction of Dennis Pitta. So you put those two areas together, and to me, that's a big couple of question marks. Combine that now with the fact that the tight end position, you lose Dennis Pitta, you might have some great tight ends in Nick Boyle and Crockett Gilmore. Maybe Max Williams comes back and is all of that. You might have a Ben Watson give you a big year at the end of his career. Or you might have 4 guys who just don't come back from their injuries, who don't have the impact, and all of a sudden now you have another position. So to me, the offense has all kinds of question marks. It makes it for a really intriguing preseason. To me, watching this team come together in preseason is going to be fascinating week to week because if you take a worst-case scenario, that leaves you with a quarterback who may or may not have some targets at wide receiver. I mean, yes, Jeremy Maclin, great addition. Rashad Perriman started to show some real flashes in OTAs. He could be a home run hitter. We've seen what Mike Wallace can do last year, the only receiver in the NFL with 3 catches over 50 yards. So you might have some home run hitters in the wide receiver position, but you might not have anything else. Or you might have some surprises on the offensive line and a running game that gets going, and all of a sudden that makes the home run hitters much more effective. So as you look at the Ravens, to me, the area that has the widest potential from complete disappointment to total pleasant surprise is the offense because of those 3 big areas of unknowns, and that's the whole story of preseason. You're not going to go out there one Wednesday in practice and say, "Oh, good, they got the tight end thing figured out." You're not going to go out there one and say, "Oh, great, right tackle not a problem anymore." You're going to watch from August 10th up into the season opening game on the road in Cincinnati, and until you see them in Cincinnati, you're going to kind of have the feeling of, all right, what do the Ravens really have on offense? And look, from a storyteller's point of view, you put that together with terrific additions to the broadcast team, I think it makes for a really compelling summer.
And definitely most of the questions seem to be leaning towards the Ravens on the offensive side of the ball. Now, going into other things here, one of your key catchphrases that you've kind of used when the Ravens have been victorious over the past years is the hay is in the barn. Again, it's on your coffee mug or your water mug right there. You have
thehaysinthebarn.com, and you can get your own Hayes in the Barn t-shirts, hats, and tumblers.
So tell me, did that originate?
Today's podcast brought to you by thehaysinthebarn.com. So it originated back when I played college football at Towson. I was a completely ordinary backup tight end. And so at the end of every practice, right near the very end, the head coach, Phil Albert, used to say, all right, guys, let's go finish it up, the hay's in the barn. Meaning that the hard work is done. You've done what you set out to do today. Just button it up and we're done. So many years ago, I want to say probably about 9 or 10 years ago, I'm not even sure which game it was, but the Ravens had one of those plays at the end of the game that sealed the win. Like a minute left, they recover a fumble or they score a touchdown, whatever the case might have been. And I didn't even realize it, but I said the hay's in the barn. And then that week and the weeks that followed, so many people said it back to me out on the street. You'd be getting your coffee at a coffee shop and somebody looked at me and said, hey, hay's in the barn, I like that. Let's pick up some clothes at the dry cleaner. And the dry cleaner said, oh, hay's in the barn, that was great. So it came back to me so much that I realized, okay, that line resonated. And from that point forward, anytime the Ravens have that moment, that play, that second where it's done, the outcome is settled, the hay's in the barn. And what the hay's in the barn means is you have achieved what you set out to achieve. So I always tell people it's not really just a football phrase. If you own a bakery and all the bread's made that day, the hay's in the barn. When you're cutting your yard, when you finish that last strip on the back 40, the hay's in the barn. When we're producing a sportscast and you deliver a really good sportscast, when the lights go out, the hay's in the barn. And I think people resonate with that idea of I did what I set out to do, and it's a great feeling. And it's something that's really drawn the Ravens fans together because people really like that sensation of, look, that's why you show up to the game. That's what you want to see. You want to see the hay's in the barn because then it's time to celebrate.
And once again, Jerry Sandusky, voice of the Ravens and WBAL Channel 11 anchor here again. You can follow him on Twitter at Sandusky WBAL and Jerry with a G Sandusky. And that leads me into the next topic of conversation here. Of course, the issue with your name. As everybody knows, especially where I'm from, up in central Pennsylvania, 5 minutes of the line. I went to high school with a lot of Penn State fans, obviously, and of course we're coming up on 6 years now that it happened with the infamous scandal there. And even to this day, like I've had discussions with you that it's still remnant on social media with people coming at you, whether it's trolling or people not realizing that you're not that guy. So I just wanted to ask it's been well documented over your, the past couple of years of your career, but what was that experience like going through it at that time when this was going on?
It was like walking through a car wash, and instead of the machines pumping water at you, they were throwing knives at you because it was coming at you from every angle imaginable. I mean, there were stretches where in a given day there would be hundreds, if not thousands, of people on Twitter just crushing you. And my wife would go to the grocery store and check out, and the woman behind the counter would like lecture her on the horrors of her husband, and my kids were getting all kind of stuff at school, and I mean you couldn't turn around and people weren't in your face. And look, I understand the confusion. It's called a homophone, by the way, when two words or phrases sound identical but mean two different things. And so right from the start, I've tried to tell people in a very calm way, Jerry with a G, no relation to the former Penn State coach. It's even in my Twitter bio. And what I try to take the approach of is I understand the confusion. And even though people would lash out at me, I'm not going to lash back at them. Because you can't change people's perspective by trying to attack them and tell them they're idiots. When you try to tell other people they're idiots, the only person who comes off as an idiot is you. And so, at a family level, we sat down, we talked it out, and said, we cannot control, this is bigger than us, but we can't control our response. And it's been a very powerful lesson in life, in business, in raising a family. You sometimes only have the choice of, am I going to put all my energy in things I can't control, or am I going to put my energy on the things I can control? And when you put your energy there, it usually works out. And look, I got a book deal out of it. I wrote a New York Times bestseller called Forgotten Sundays that begins and ends with the whole name dilemma. Nobody forgets my name at a cocktail party. If you go to a convention and meet 300 people, you'll need business cards to remember most of them. Everybody remembers my name, and anybody will take my call, even out of sheer curiosity. So, like anything in life, if you look at it the right way, you can find a lot of positives. And, Jerry with a G has become a real big thing. People know, oh, Jerry, and they all even add, with a G. I sign my emails, G, period. Just the G is all about me, and I'm all about the G. And I tell people there's a big difference between the 7th letter of the alphabet, G, and the 10th letter, J. If you're Jerry with a J, you're doing 50 to life. If you're Jerry with a G, you're coming to life in your 50s. It's good to be Jerry with a G.
How are things now, almost 6 years removed from everything that happened?
Depends on where I go. So if I'm in Baltimore, it's fine. Most people in Baltimore know me. I've gone through it. They get it. If I leave the area, I do a lot of public speaking. I do a lot of seminars on presentation skills, media coaching. If I do that in a town other than Baltimore, it's the first thing I have to explain. If I'm speaking at a conference in Las Vegas and people see my name on the program, man, there are some wide-eyed stares and people thinking, "What the heck is he speaking for?" And then I have an open that I use to diffuse the tension and make people laugh a little bit. And so it's going to be a big deal for years and years and years. And again, one of the things I can't control. It just comes down to how am I going to choose to respond to it.
And one last question for you as we're coming up on our final minutes here. Go through a little bit about your Sandusky Group, what you're doing there. You kind of mentioned it, and that last answer to promote that a little bit.
So, because of the nature of my job as a broadcaster, I've had to go to so many banquets over the years. For many years, I would see really talented business people get up and deliver awful presentations and damage their own brand. And it was because nobody had ever shown them how to actually do a presentation, how to deliver a keynote speech, how to handle an interview on television or radio or in print. And so about 20 years ago, I started to do that for a couple of select friends, and then they would refer me to people, then they would refer to me to people, and just over the years it grew into an actual business. And I have 3 major areas: presentation skills, public speaking skills, media coaching, and then I do a lot of keynote speaking as well. And I do seminars, and I do one-on-one coaching with executives and professionals. And it really comes down to this: we show you or people who work for you how to transform your ability to engage, amaze, and influence audiences anywhere, anytime.
Well, Jerry, I want to thank you again for joining me today on this
My pleasure.
Of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Gerry Sandusky and Sandusky WBAL. And, of course, with the Ravens beginning training camp next week, you can catch him on the air. What radio station is it now?
It'll be WBAL, 1090 AM, 98 Rock, WIYY, and, of course, the games will also be simulcast on Channel 11.
And, of course, since I go to school in Central PA, it's been about 3 years since I've heard a broadcast on the radio, so I just wasn't sure what the exact station it was.
But you'll be dialed in this year.
Absolutely.
You've got a vested interest.
And now let's go get ready for our 6 o'clock coming up in a couple minutes.
As for the podcast, the Hayes in the Barn.
The Hayes in the Barn on the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. Thanks, Jerry.
You got it.
Once again, there goes Gerry Sandusky, Ravens broadcaster, the voice of the Ravens, and WBAL Channel 11 anchor and sports director. Once again, want to thank him for taking some time out of his day to sit down with me and discuss all that in the interview. All of their social media, as I said before, Gerry Sandusky and Sandusky WBAL on Twitter. That's Jerry with a G again. And if you want to catch Jerry's sportscast on WBAL, it's the NBC station in the Baltimore market, Channel 11. You can catch him weeknights during the 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock p.m. He's the night anchor on the weeknights in the sports section of the broadcast. And then Ravens games, the preseason broadcast for those who live in market will air on your local NBC television stations. And during the season, as he said during the interview, the Ravens games that he broadcasts will air on 98 Rock, WBAL 1090, and BaltimoreRavens.com. So 2 radio stations, both an AM and an FM channel, and they can also be streamed online as well. I know, being up in Bloomsburg, as I said, I haven't, had a chance to really listen to them all that much, because before I would listen to the broadcast in the car a little bit, but now that I know Jerry on a more personal level, I definitely plan on, when I'm in my, watching the games up in Bloomsburg, I do plan on streaming some of the broadcasts from BaltimoreRavens.com. So once again, I want to thank Jerry for his time today, and thank you for listening to this very special edition of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. Ravens camp kicks off a week from today, as the podcast drops today on Thursday, and it will be exciting to see what happens, and it was sure interesting to get Jerry's take on all things Ravens and all the stuff we discussed in the podcast. So thanks again. Please subscribe to us on either iTunes or SoundCloud, and leave us a review for Charm City Birdwatch. I'm Jake McDonald.